This short video is going to cover certain one-step equations with decimals where negative numbers are involved. This is where it gets really tricky because you have to really understand what you're doing with the negative numbers. So this first example, n plus 4.5 equals negative 7.9. So we know we have to undo the addition with subtraction. So we're subtracting 4.5. But before we even do that, let's think about the original problem once more. What are we going to have to add to 4.5 to get a negative number? It's going to have to be an even more negative number in order to add a positive number and still get a negative number. You could even round the 4.5 to 5 and round the negative 9.7 to 10. Let's think about that. In order to add 5 and get negative 10, we'd have to start with negative 15. So our answer is probably going to be about negative 15. Keep that in mind. So let's look at what we're doing here. Negative 9.7 minus 4.5. Remember, we can make that plus a negative 4.5. A negative plus a negative is going to become more negative. So what we're doing here is we're actually going to be adding the two numbers. Yes, we are adding the decimals, even though our operation began as subtraction. This is just like what would happen if we had negative 10 plus negative 5. 7 plus 5. So we have 14 and 2/10. But our final answer we just talked about has to be negative. Now let's look at this example. Remember, the variable's on the right side, but that doesn't change anything. We have a negative 24.23. Now let's think about it again. If we were to round, it would be about 15, and we have a negative 24. If we were to add to negative 24 and get a positive 15, it would have to be an even bigger positive number so that when we add the negative number, we still have positive 15. So now let's go back to our problem. To get rid of a negative 24, we have to add positive 24 and 23/100. These cancel out. Now we're just doing normal addition, which is really nice. Make sure we line up our decimal points. And we would have a positive answer. This would make sense because if we have a bigger positive number plus a negative number, it would still stay positive. Now let's look at some examples where we have subtraction and negative numbers. So in this one, remember, let's think realistically again. If we had k minus 14 equals negative 18, what is k going to have to be in order so that when we subtract 14, we get negative 18? We're going to have to start with a negative number so that we can get all the way to negative 18. So let's go back to our problem. The inverse of subtraction is addition. So we're adding 14 and 4/10 to both sides. This is where it gets tricky though. a negative number plus a positive number. Think about our number line. If we're adding 14, we're going to the right. That means our absolute value is getting smaller, which means even though we're adding, we're going to need to subtract. So our answer would be, we have 3.99. Now we need to think about if it's positive or negative. Negative 18 has the bigger absolute value, negative 3.99, which makes sense if we put it back into our original problem. Here's our final example we'll look at with negative numbers. So again, we have subtraction. To undo subtraction, we have to use addition. This one is really similar to the problem before it. Actually, I want you to pause the video, try it on your own, and then I'll show you the answer. Okay, so let's take a look at the answer. We know that C has to be a negative number, but in order to get there, we need to undo subtraction with addition. Now, negative 10 plus a positive 2.6 means we're going up the number line, but we're still staying negative. So we're actually going to have to subtract the absolute values. Now let's think about, is our answer positive or negative? We already said it had to be negative. Negative 7 and 4/10. That would be our final answer. So these are all the ones that have to do with negative numbers. We'll talk about them tomorrow.